A 21-year-old mother goes out for the night on the town. She hadn't been out since the baby was born, and Christina Whittaker was looking to have a good time. Unfortunately, she ended up having too much to drink and would be kicked out of more than one bar that evening. Was the alcohol mixing badly with her bipolar medication? We may never know. Christina was last seen leaving the bar, crying, trying to get someone to give her a ride home. The rumor mill claims Christina was trafficked to the town of Peoria, Illinois, but there's no solid evidence to verify this. While the family clings to hope with all of the unverified sightings, not one shred of evidence has come forward to prove that Christina ever left the town of Hannibal that night. What happened to Christina Whittaker? This case is brought to you by... Behind every true crime story is a shattered life. I have raised awareness for over 300 cases and have worked directly with the family members on many of them. This book highlights 40 case files. Some of them are famous, many of them are obscure. There's missing persons cases, unsolved homicides, serial killers, and more. Check out Shattered today to learn more. Now tonight we have an interesting case. This is one of my archived cases. As you guys know, I was writing cold cases way back in 2017 is when I started my blog. By 2018, I was all on fire writing cold cases. And then I took a couple-year break to study more psychology and victims advocacy and different things. By then, though, I had written about over 300 different cold cases. And this is one of those cases. This is one of those cases I'm like, I'm going to revisit the Christina Whittaker case and see if there's any updates. Now, in my research, looking to see if there were any updates on this case, I did find a 6-part documentary. It's on Discovery Plus. It was created by Christina Fontana and her team. It's called Relentless. There is a link to that 6-part documentary. You can see it in the video description as well. So I will tell you if you want some information on that case. It is a 6-part documentary. It kind of gives an overview of her journey over the last 10 or 11 years that she has been looking into this case. So it'll give you some insights. And so check out Christina Fontana's documentary. Again, the link is in the video description. Now we're talking about a 21-year-old woman from Hannibal, Missouri. Now she went missing on November, I'm looking down at my notes, November 13th, 2009. Now she went missing. She had gone out to some bars in the town. She had a child at home that was at home with her boyfriend. Her parents, that she was really close to, they were actually out of town in Texas, I believe, on some kind of trip. So she left the baby with her boyfriend. She was going to take a night out, and he said he'd stay home with the child. She went out. She was actually at some local bars. She was at several different ones. She did get kicked out of a couple of them because she had had too much to drink. And then all of a sudden she ends up on the street. She has no one that will take her home, and she's upset. And then all of a sudden this 21-year-old woman disappears into thin air. The next day, her cell phone is found down the street a ways, and right there at the location of where her cell phone and her keys were found, you will find that there was a mysterious hit-and-run accident that didn't seem like it was ever investigated. We're going to talk about the importance of that. We're also going to talk about some a little bit more serious topics tonight. We're going to be talking about how rumor mills can destroy cold cases. We're also going to be talking about how victims, family members, how their trauma can affect them and how their trauma can affect the case. How you as a victim's advocate can actually help the family more by not necessarily buying into all of the rumor mills. We're going to be talking about the credibility of eyewitnesses eyewitness statements, because you're going to find out it's a startling statistic that eyewitness statements are absolutely not reliable, even though we think they are. So we're going to be talking about a lot of serious topics. We're going to be talking about some red flags to look at, and we're going to be talking about Christina Whittaker. Now, Christina Whittaker is still missing. There has been a ton of rumor mill in this case, and after listening to all 6 hours of Christina Fontana's documentary series, I do believe that she has come to some of the same conclusions I did 5 years ago when I first wrote about this case. But I do believe that there's a few more things that we need to look at, and I do believe that by talking about this case and sharing the stories and sharing the pictures, we can continue to put pressure on the Hannibal Police Department and continue to bring in leads, and eventually hopefully something will be done for this family, because this is something we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about victim shaming. We're also going to be talking about the disturbing behavior where a victim, we don't want to make them into saints either. We don't want to shame victim shaming, no victim shaming, and no victim sainthood either, because victim sainthood is actually just as dangerous or more so than victim shaming. So we're going to talk about some serious topics, and we're going to be talking about the Christina Whittaker case. So the first major theory and narrative in this case is that she was put into the sex trafficking industry, that she was picked up, and that she was taken to Peoria, Illinois, and there was all kinds of so-called sightings of Christina. Even to this day, people will say that they've seen her in Peoria, but unfortunately, nobody could ever verify any of those sightings. And then that's where we're going to kind of go into how eyewitness statements are deceptive. In our theory, we like to tend to think that if someone says, hey, I seen that person, that it's the truth, and that person is not lying to you. But when you understand how our memories are formed, and you understand things about how the brain works, literally we have something called a reticular activating system in our brain that makes us look for specific things when we are emotionally charged about them. We'll talk about how the RAS, is what I call it when I was doing life coaching, how the RAS can affect your eyewitness testimony. So we're going to talk about a lot of deep things, but I will tell you right up front, I have a different theory on this case, and I will tell you why I have a different theory on this case. I have written about 300 cold cases, and over the course of time, you would have to be a dancy monkey not to recognize patterns after 300 of these things. Now, I will also tell you I have worked with hundreds of victims' family members as a victim's advocate, trying to raise awareness about these cases. First major theory that has gone on, and the family truly believes, is that a man by the name of Darcy Bookie Morris was supposedly a local drug dealer that came in and took Christina and drugged her up and kidnapped her and took her to Peoria, Illinois, and there she is being drugged and brainwashed and kept there, and she's afraid to go home, and she's afraid to go get help. Okay, now we're gonna go through all of these rumor mills. Some of them may sound fantastical, but we are going to try to go through them and knock them down each one by one, and then we will let you decide if you still believe in the rumor mill or not. So before I jump in too much farther, I want to introduce my two co-hosts. I'm sorry, I'm kind of, I usually do that right away, but we were kind of off our rhythm a little bit because our sound problems. I do have one of my favorite victims advocates and crime writer with me. Her name is Cricket Andrews. Hi, Cricket. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Invite your friends.
Absolutely. I also have one of my favorite research assistants. I have Tammy. Miss T, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Well, we had some sound problems, and that kind of knocked us off our rhythm. So I apologize for not introducing you right away. But Tammy, let's talk to you first. Okay.
Okay.
When we first got into this case, and when I first sent you this case, the first narrative is that she was part of human trafficking, that she had been trafficked to another city, and that she has lived there for 11 years. What did you think when you first read this case? Because I know you're relatively new to this. You've only been in the true crime genre for a few months. We've kind of drug you in, and Crick and I have been doing this for years, so we've kind of got some ideas on things. And I know sometimes you have some questions, and so I wanted to give you the floor and tell you, what did you think of this case when you first started? Did it... What was your first thoughts on it? Let's just leave it like that.
I thought it might have been human trafficking, because when you watch the videos on, they all kind of sit there, and they leave a lot of things out. You know, there like unless you watch that documentary, there's a lot of things that you don't know about the case, and it kind of makes sense what they're saying, and it leads you to believe that, well, that, you know, they don't say anything about the victim. They don't tell you the kind of things that she was into. And I don't know. It's just kind of easy to believe it's a human trafficking until you study it. And there's so many records on this case. So
Right. It's easy to buy into the narrative of human trafficking, especially nowadays when human trafficking is the buzzword. Now, you have to understand, when you've been in true crime, into this space for a long time, and Cricket, I'm sure you could contest to this because you've been in it as long as I have, maybe a little bit longer even. When you've been in this space for a long time, you will see every few years, every 5 years, every 8 years, 10 years, somewhere around in there, the buzzwords will shift. It's like it's like a cycle, and for 3 or 4 years, it'll all be this kind of case, and that is the big thing, and everything's labeled that, and then it'll shift to the next thing. And here about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, they did a big bunch of movies on human trafficking and a big bunch of documentaries, and human trafficking became the hashtag, and so now everything's real easy to label that trending hashtag. What do you think, Cricket? Do you think this is you think I'm right about that? Because to me, I kind of notice it kind of goes in waves.
Well, as far as sex trafficking and what I know about it, because I've gotten people out of trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
It is widespread, but you're not going to be taken for sex trafficking, brought back into the town they took you in. That does not happen, number one. Number two, they drug you and beat you to break you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that are taken into trafficking, during that breaking your spirit down and drugging you, a lot of them overdose because they can't take it.
Right. Well, and that's something that I was trying to talk to Tammy about. In the movies, you see that there's an airplane full of 30 11, 12-year-old girls, and they're all half naked, they're all duct taped together, and they're all thrown into this airplane, and then they survive these horrible things for 20 years, and then they find them and they rescue. That's all drama. Because think about the logistics of how hard it would be to steal 30 little girls at the same time and nobody notice. You have to realize that logistically it looks a little different than what we see in the movies. And like what you were saying, somebody doesn't usually, 90% of the time, a sex trafficking, someone who's been a victim of that, they don't live for 10, 20 years in that world. They overdose. They get overdosed because when it comes down to it, somebody, okay, they've kidnapped you. They're in the process of breaking you down and trying to brainwash you into controlling you, to manipulate you, all of these things. They're going to give you a massive amount of drugs to keep you at a certain level, okay? But then your body adjusts to those drugs. And so you're going to need a little bit more drugs to get back down to that same level. So what happens a lot of times is these people that have become a victim of this, they only last a few months because they get OD'd on these drugs. So they don't last 11 years.
The ones that do get overdosed on it, believe it or not, that is a small amount.
Well, what it is it's
also
their body can't adjust to it at the speed that they're getting it.
Right, and if you have somebody that is already a drug user, they can handle more.
Right.
But if you're drug trafficked, you are constantly on the move. You're hotel to hotel. You're always in somebody's sight.
Right. They're not gonna bring you back. So basically what the narrative is that Christina has been trafficked to Peoria, but then they say the same rumor mill that says she's trafficked to there and people swear they've seen her there. They also say, well, sometimes she sneaks back into town. And I'm sitting here going, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to sneak this person back into town, especially a town the size of Hannibal. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's in everybody's business. We're covering a small town here, and people think small towns are a great place to live, and there's so much chaos and crime in small towns. It would make big towns blush if they knew how much crap was going on in small towns. But this is the thing. There's the same rumor mill that says she's in Peoria also says that she comes back periodically. And so to me, she's either there or she's here. She's not in both places. It wouldn't be practical to take this person that you have stolen, bring her back into her normal environment, because alone that's going to trigger all of her memories, all of her will to live, all of her homesickness, everything that she's willing to fight for. It's going to trigger all that and bring all that back. So you're not going to bring her back to Hannibal. Okay.
And she's got her baby there too. So.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, she's had her baby in Hannibal.
Yeah, she's got a baby there. So on this night, November 13th of 2009, she goes to these different bars, and she's seen at these different bars. And she is kicked out. One person said they seen her on the sidewalk crying because she couldn't get a ride. There's all kinds of different rumor mills of things. But then you're going to hear there's various different rumors. But there's in my case, you're going to hear that a man that they call Bookie Morris, Darcy Bookie Morris, took her to Peoria. Okay. Because there's one rumor that says that she owed a drug debt. So he took her for the drug debt, which that happens. But you also have to realize that Darcy Bookie Morris said he wasn't even in that town that day or that evening. He was back in Peoria, which I believe they said is, 3 hours, 4 hours away?
2.5.
Was in, how many?
2.5.
He was in Peoria, these couple hours away, or 3 hours away, however long. He was in Peoria with his wife at the local hospital because she was giving birth to their child. So I'm sitting here going, any good law enforcement would be able to say, okay, that's easy to check out. Let me check the local hospital records and find out if Bookie Morris's wife was having a baby that day. So that would be an easy alibi to establish if anyone wanted to investigate this. Now, you're going to also find out that there's rumors about the police being corrupt. There's rumors about Christina being a CI for the local police department. You're going to find there's some rumors that blame the police for getting her on drugs in the first place. There's going to be some rumors that say some of the police were having sex with underage girls in the town, Christina being one of them. You're going to find all these rumors, and the problem with small town rumors is they're easy to get sucked into, because you hear it from 5 people, so it must be real, right? So you hear so-and-so at the barber shop say, well, I heard this. And then you hear someone at the grocery store say, well, I heard this. And it's the same thing. And you're like, oh, it must be true. No, it's a rumor mill that's just been repeated 5 times. So you've got to find a way to substantiate each one of those rumor mills. Okay, so if the police got her addicted to drugs in the first place, okay? I'm not saying it's true or false. If the police got her addicted to drugs in the first place, where's the corroborating evidence? I didn't see any. So I have to take that. I can't say it's true and I can't say it's false. I have to take it, mentally separate it out, and set it on a shelf until I can find more information. Okay? I cannot allow my decisions from now on in my little investigation to be hindered by that until I find more information. So you have to be able to separate these things out. Also, we see that, okay, there was supposed to be 3 officers that were having sex with underage girls. Is there any evidence of this? Were any of them reprimanded? Were any of them arrested? Was there any evidence of that? I can't find it. I'm putting it on the shelf. Okay. Next, was she a CI? Now, this is something, I have a book I'm literally working on, The Good and the Bad and the Ugly of confidential informants. I'm working on it with a ex-gangster who was a confidential informant. And we're talking about how dangerous it is for the informant. We're talking about how bad it is on all these different levels, how hard it is to maintain those informants. And so we're going to be talking about all of those things, but there is evidence, even though the local police department will not say that she was an informant. You go through and you look and you find that she was on parole, and you get those parole papers. Those parole papers say, guess what? She was an informant. Okay, so this is what I want to go through now. I want to talk about victim shaming and victim sainthood. Okay. Now, we all know it's not right, polite, or just to shame a victim or their family member, okay? That's something we don't do, and that's something I don't tolerate on my channel, in my company, at all. I have completely written people off that try to do that. But there is something on the other side of that coin. See, there's always 2 sides to a coin. We don't want to shame victims, okay? But we don't want to saint them either. And here's the problem. This is something that's really, really hindered this case. People close to Christina, and again, I'm not blaming or shaming, people close to Christina withheld some basic information about Christina for a very long time because they did not want to make her look bad. Okay, they made it out like she'd never done drugs. They made it out like she was a good, innocent, sweet little girl. They made it out like, she was some kind of saint. They did not let us know that she had, she went missing on November 13, 2009. So let's see. She has on CaseNet, this is just the stuff that made it to CaseNet. She has she got in trouble with the law December of 2006. She got in trouble with the law February of 2007. Again in March 2007. August 2007. Got in trouble with the law again on October 2007. And again March of 2008. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times that she got in trouble with the law. Okay? We need to know those things. Okay? This doesn't make her bad or good. This doesn't change our view, or it should not change you as a victim's advocate, how hard you look for this person. Now, we all know, I've got some victims' family members on this chat right now that know that some law enforcement officers have a tendency to, if you've been in trouble with the law, they just don't tend to look for you as much or as hard as they do somebody else. That's not correct. That's not right. And that's not your call to do. If you are supposed to be investigating something, you investigate it to the end, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're pretty, whether they're ugly, what color they are, what gender they are, their orientations, their religion. None of that is relevant. You chase the clues, you chase the case until it's done. None of that's relevant. The only problem is it goes to the opposite direction. So we don't want to shame victims, but then when you make them into saints, we don't get all of the information, okay? We needed to know that she had been in jail a couple times. She spent 10 days in jail at one point, and she spent 15 days in jail at another point. We need to know that she was not just getting in trouble for intoxication, she was getting in trouble on drug charges. We need to know that part of her parole and her probation, she got offered the job as a CI. We need to know those things because that changes the way we investigate from here on out. So we need to make sure that we treat all of the victims the same, but we also need to make sure that we don't saint them either. Okay, and this is something that you need to keep an eye out for. If you are a victim's advocate, or if you're in the true crime field, whether you're a crime writer, whether you're an advocate, whether you're an attorney, whether you're an officer, whatever your position in the true crime genre here, you need to make sure that you keep it in the back of your mind. The family always has a tendency towards sainthood, okay? So you need to realize that this isn't necessarily them lying to you. This is them trying to cherish the memory of someone they care about dearly. But you also need to see through that facade and find the truth. Because no human is perfect. But the mother who's lost a child, that child is perfect in the mother's eyes. As it should be. Okay? But as an investigator of some sort, whether you're a keyboard warrior or you're actually out there boots on the ground, you need to be able to see through that victim sainthood that poor mother is trying to put on the person. Okay, so does that make sense? I mean, am I rambling, or does that make sense, Cricket? I know we lost you for a minute.
No, that makes perfect sense. Because we all, as parents, we all want to see all good in our kids.
Absolutely, we want to see. But see, in this case, the fact that they didn't let anyone know that Christina had been in trouble with the law, that Christina had done drugs in the past, that Christina had run-ins with the bar that she was last kicked out of, she actually was banned for a couple years, but they let her in because it was a holiday party. So that tells me she has had issues for a while. Now, the mother says that she also had bipolar and she was on all kinds of medication, and we know that mixes bad with the alcohol. So none of this is in the victim blaming mode. We are, however, trying to say, all of those of you that are fighting to look for truth, those of you that are chasing justice, those of you that are looking for answers, you're going to have to keep that in the back of your mind and look through it, okay? Because we all know that nobody's perfect. But the family members are going to try. The family members are desperate to protect what little bit they have left, and that is a trauma response. So it's not out of... Sometimes family does outright lie. I won't say that. But it comes from a good place a lot of times. A lot of times it's just like, I don't want my baby to look bad. And now the public knows the worst parts of my child. And so you need to realize it's not necessarily coming out of something
in
negative.
any investigation, if you don't say...
Are you still there? Cricket?
Yeah, I feel like...
We lost you for a second. We didn't hear anything you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you just say? We can't hear you again. Sorry, guys. We're having a lot of trouble
Well,
with our technical stuff tonight.
it was like when I first started looking into it. Whenever you start looking at facts, it starts opening it up more to what have really happened.
Yeah. Tammy, I can barely hear you. Girls,
Yeah.
guys, all of you that are watching, can you hear Tammy and Cricket? Because I can barely hear Tammy at all. So, okay, well, I'm going to continue. In this town, you also need to realize that there is some undercurrent of organized crime. Now, they call them, I think, romantials is how you say it. They are kind of derogatory term would be gypsy. So I don't know, romantial, I think is how the official term. But they do have a lot of undertow ties to organized crime, and they do have a lot of that in the town, and you will find that Christina Whittaker, on both her mom's side and her dad's side, have ties to that. So there is a lot of undertone in this town of organized crime. You'll find out that this was a standard lifestyle for Christina. You'll find out that drugs and alcohol and that kind of lifestyle was common for her. And all of that, you need to set aside your judgment and just take the information and see where it leads you in the case. So this is where we need to know all of this when we go to chase these cases. We don't need to hide anything. Your job is not to be the judge. Your job is you're not some kind of priest or pastor. You're not the judge. You're not the judge in a court of law. So forget the judgment, take the information and see where it leads you with the facts. And so this is where we have to really weed out all of that and find out what's really going on. So Christina's family had ties to some organized crime in their family history. So this is something that kind of brings you a little bit different understanding to the facts. So we need to understand these things. But going through all of the rumor mills, you're going to find out that there was a supposed sighting of Christina in Peoria. And this was a woman who was checked into a mental hospital ward, and she said that the woman in the bed next to her was Christina Whittaker, and she had all these issues and she has this big fantastical tale and story. She has so many details, and I mean, it just really revs up your emotions when you're listening to this woman. And then you find out that this woman has no idea what she's talking about. You'll have no way of substantiating her story. You also find out that if you watch and you listen, you'll find that this person adds another little detail as soon as she pulls a detail from you. So if you listen to somebody, you just sit back and listen, and you hear their story start to change and adjust as you're talking to them, okay? So sit back and you hear two people talking, and you hear this person, their story changes as soon as this person gives them a nugget of information. That nugget of information is taken in, it's cycled, and it's processed into this person's story, okay? When you see that starting to happen, you need to realize that story is not accurate. Okay, you need to realize that story is being built as this person is siphoning information. That is a standard con game that I learned from a con man that I wrote about in the first true crime book I ever wrote. He said, what people don't realize is they say more information than they're intending. And then if you listen, you can take that information and build it into your narrative and spit it back, and they think you've told them something great. Okay? So you need to pay attention to that. So when somebody's story, a witness statement or whatever, starts slowly progressing as more information comes out, you automatically need to take that, set it on a shelf, and find corroborating evidence, because that's a red flag to show you that it's being manufactured as they get more information. Yes, guys, I'm sorry you can't hear Tammy or Cricket. But I'm having terrible problems with my sound tonight. I have no idea why. Okay, so we're going to continue on. The next red flag you want to think about is when you don't have anything to substantiate the evidence or the statement, the witness statement, but another rumor mill. So when you have another rumor mill and that's the only corroboration you have, you need to be careful with that, okay? Because you've got to have something tangible. Now, in this case, there's only 2 pieces of information. After going through everything, after I went ahead and listened to all 6 hours of the documentary, everything, because I thought, well, maybe she dug up something I didn't know. I listened to all of everything. There's only 2 pieces of real evidence in this story, okay? The first thing they said was Darcy Bookie Morris took her and took her to Peoria, okay? He says he wasn't even in that town. Nobody actually saw him in that town. You have one eyewitness who said they saw a black guy. Okay, I'm sure Bookie wasn't the only black male in that town on that night. But this is what they're trying to say, it was Bookie. Now, there's a chance it could have been, but we don't have anything to substantiate that story, okay? The only thing you have is some nearby person that says, I seen a black guy. Who cares? There were probably 10,000 black guys in that town on that night. Who knows, okay? So we don't have anything to substantiate that, so we're going to set it aside and we're going to look at the next piece of information. The next piece of information is her cell phone and keys were found the next day just down the road from the bar that she was kicked out of last, okay? Now, there was a weird little tidbit of information that was overlooked, and as far as I can tell, no one investigated it. They were found at a location in the road there that had a hit-and-run accident. There was a damaged car that was parked with red paint flecks all over it. You could tell someone hit the car and drove off. Her phone and her keys were there, okay? Now, you have a rumor mill. So here's rumor mill. The person who found the phone, which we know isn't rumor mill because that was substantiated, is a guy named Richard Danny Baker. They call him Danny, okay? Now, he's a registered sex offender in the area, and think he had some ties into drugs. Okay, he found the phone, and it was in that area. Okay, that phone was turned in, everything. Here's where the rumor mill can come in handy. They didn't say anything to anyone. It wasn't in the local papers. It wasn't public knowledge that there was a hit-and-run accident a block or so from the bar. There was no information out there unless it was the guy that got his car hit, okay? So it wasn't public information that there was a hit-and-run accident on the same night that Christina Whittaker went missing. But then, here comes, I can't remember if it was an ex-girlfriend or if it was an ex-wife, said that that night she called Danny for a ride home because she had been kicked out of all the bars. Her friend that she had come with wasn't leaving the bars, and she didn't have a ride home, so she calls Danny, which she knew well. Okay? Well, here's the thing. This girlfriend or ex that told the story said that Danny told her that him and a friend in a red pickup truck came and picked up Christina. But she was drunk and stumbling around in the road. They swung around the corner at a high rate of speed, hit her and the parked car. Okay? She drops her phone and her keys. The two men in a panic grab Christina, throw her in the truck, in the pickup truck, and they dispose of her that night. Okay? That is a rumor mill. That's just as big a rumor as anything else that we've heard. But here's the thing. What makes that rumor mill different than any of the other rumor mills is there's only 2 pieces of physical evidence in this whole story. See, there's no body ever been found. Nobody has actually verified they've actually seen her. There's a lot of rumors, but nobody can verify that they've seen her. There's only two solid pieces of evidence. That cell phone, where it was found, and then there was that accident, and there was red paint flicks all over that damaged vehicle. Okay, well, that same rumor mill tells you who the driver of that vehicle was, a guy named Josh Bowen. Okay, Josh Bowen just so happens to 2 weeks later gets rid of his beat up red vehicle and gets a new truck and posts it all over Facebook. Okay, so in my looking at all this, you've got all of these fantastical tales. She was sex trafficked off, and then she's brought back periodically, and then she's sex trafficked off, and it's been 11, 12 years, but she's still out there being trafficked. A little fantastic for me. Then you got the rumor mill out, well, her and her mom had a big fight, so she ran away and just wanted to live her life without her mom's influence. She did that and left her baby behind? Really don't think so, because her baby was really her whole life. So that doesn't really hold water with me either. Then you find out that there's one other piece of evidence that we weren't told at the beginning. Her and her brother had a big fight 6 months before she went missing. It was enough that she ended up in the hospital. Okay? But they supposedly made up and everything was fine there. So here's the thing. The police did not talk to the brother. The police did not talk to the family. As far as we know, they didn't talk to Danny Book, other than the fact that he turned in the phone. By the time the police turned around to get a statement from him, he had already lawyered up. So, this is where the case stands. All these years later, nobody can still substantiate that they have ever seen this woman in Peoria. You've got a whole bunch of rumor mills. We don't even have an age-progressed photo. So people say, oh yeah, I seen that girl in the flyer. Well, that flyer is 11, 12, 13 years old by now. She don't look the same. Okay? So when you realize that 73% of eyewitness testimony has been debunked by DNA, you will find out that 73% of eyewitness testimonies have been debunked by DNA. I said that twice for a reason. Our eyewitness testimony isn't as accurate as we think it is. So these people who look across the street and think they see some kind of redhead and say that it was Christina aren't necessarily lying, but they don't have good information and nobody can actually substantiate it. So I tend to believe when a case gets too fantastical, it's time to step back and look at the practical. Okay? The practical outlook on this case is that she never made it out of Hannibal. The practical outlook on this case is there's only two pieces of evidence, and both pieces of that evidence add up to a man named Danny Baker, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He died on January 4th, 2017. So 8 years after Christina Whittaker's disappearance, the man who the two pieces of evidence actually point to dies, and police have never fully investigated the man. And this is where we're at. Tammy, what do you think about all that? I don't know what happened to Cricket. She's gone.
I think I heard her a second ago. You mentioned the mental health facility in Peoria. Somebody said
I can't hear you. What? Mentioned what?
The mental health facility in Peoria.
Yeah.
They said they saw it there. I looked into that, and one of the things I read on it said that the standalone cities had already closed down by then. So that may not even, that would rule that out.
I can't understand anything you're saying, Tammy. I don't know what's going on with her sound, but I can't understand a word. I did understand the mental health hospital in Peoria.
It supposedly had closed down by the time.
Oh, it shut down by that time?
They said the standalone facilities had shut down by then. So,
So that kind of debunks her story.
yeah.
If if the whole hospital wasn't there by the time she come up with the story. And see, you need to understand that this is one thing I noticed. People need to understand that the way the rumor mill works. There are sorry sacks out there who will tell you whatever they can come up with just to get their story into the investigation. They will insert themselves into the investigation. They will make up stories because they enjoy seeing the poor mother run from here to there to who there. They like to play with the victim's family members. There are sorry sacks out there that will do that. And when you work through so many cases, it's not surprising to you anymore. But I did notice that Christina Fontana in her documentary was surprised at how many things like that popped up. Unfortunately, there are jerks out there. They like to play with the victim's family members. They like to torment them. There's also the whole subculture of prison culture and street life where you literally, your whole social standing is based on how dangerous you are perceived to be. So they will make up garbage and admit to murdering people and doing hideously horrible things to people because it makes them look big and bad and gives them street cred on the street or in prison. And that's how they survive. You think, well, if they didn't do it, why would they say something like that? They are doing it for a reason because it benefits them. I had no idea about this until I worked with an ex-criminal for years on his book. And then you find out they live based on their perceived danger level. So if they're perceived as having all kinds of connections and perceived as being some kind of psychopath that'll kill you in a heartbeat, they will get by with a lot more and they will have a better go of it in prison and on the street because nobody will mess with them. So you are going to have people manipulating and playing those games with you. And that's the reason why some of these cases are so hard to solve, because you've got people that'll come up with rumor mills, and then you have people that will come up and make up things just to benefit them. And you have some that are just sick in the head and they like to play games and they like to extort the family for money. And, and so when you've worked through so many cases, you'll find it's disturbing and it's disgusting, but it's not surprising anymore. There are sick people out there who get off on re-victimizing victims' family members, and it's disgusting. But I think a lot of the rumor mill is just to see Christina's mom run here and there and here and there and here and there. They're enjoying like having a puppet on a string, and they're just dangling it out there for this poor mother. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting human behavior. And so I think every mom's going to want to believe that Christina Whittaker is still here and that she's somehow trafficked off and that she somehow just can't come home. And the mother is holding on to that faith. That's the only thing that keeps her going. So I will not take that from her. If that's what she wants to believe, I hope she's right and I hope that I am wrong. But everything that I see in this case points to the fact that the man that drove that red truck and had a passenger by the name of Danny Baker came to pick up Christina, hit her with the truck. Because that's the only thing that the evidence points to.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Tammy.
Okay. Well, what was interesting, whenever I was finding information on this and everything, the hit barely mentioned. I think it might have been mentioned on video.
Yeah.
Only one place on the internet out of the dozens and dozens on the internet.
Yeah, you really have to fight hard to find that information. Yes, and that's one thing I give a shout out to Christina Fontana. She dug into the rumor mill and she found all kinds of rumor mills. You know, and she did find those informations, and she was able to get, you know, like the probation information, you know, and all that kind of thing that just re-verified. I know you and Tammy, talked about her being a CI way back before we even got confirmation of it. You know, because to me, a lot of these cases, they turn out to be CIs. And so, what?
Is that very, is that very wise for them to put that she's a CI on her paperwork? I mean, is that normal?
For them not to admit that she's a CI?
Well, they put it on her paperwork.
They put it on her probation paperwork, but it's not. Yeah.
But that's
because
not,
normally the probation paperwork isn't public knowledge.
but
Okay.
still,
Yeah, the probation paperwork, see, for the Christina to get it for the documentary, they had to go before a judge to get it released to them, and that was only after 10 years or so after she was gone. So it's not a public knowledge thing that she was a CI. I just assumed she was because I've seen so many cases where the CIs are the ones that get, you know, they get taken, and because they're in a very volatile situation, you know. And then if you realize that her family history is tied to organized crime, not necessarily that her immediate family was organized crime, but she was tied, her family history was tied to it, you know, it just puts her in an extremely dangerous, position. And so to me, it was not surprising to find that out. So I hate that Cricket's gone. Let's see if I can reach out to her. So Tammy, what do you think? Was there a point that I missed? Because there's so many points that we could cover.
yeah, I didn't know if you mentioned Steve Wilcox's show or not. That's
No,
relevant.
I won't even give that. That was such a laughing stock waste of time. That was nothing but TV drama and nonsense. Because in reality, even the family members, they just went along with the scripted television show, even though the evidence and their own opinions were different before the show and after the show.
Mm-hmm.
So when the family's opinion was different before and different after, but on the show they had the same narrative, that tells me it was scripted.
Yeah.
You know, again, we don't want to victim shame, but here's the thing. There was no evidence presented on that show to change their opinions, but their opinions changed anyways because that was the narrative of the show. You know, so you have to go in to think. You have to go in and think. Well, the mom was probably thinking, well, however they twist this, it's good as long as my daughter's name's out there. Well, in reality, it's not. That actually causes more damage than good. So you really want to control the narrative when it comes to stuff like that, because an unscripted TV show or a scripted TV show, that was all drama, you know. And you have to realize where Steve Wilco came from. That was the Jerry Springer show, just revisited with Steve. And that's basically, you know, if you watch that about this case, you'll see that nothing lines up with the facts of the case whatsoever. So
It just makes the water, you know,
it just makes it harder. And then people say, well, no one's investigating. Well, they might be, but you keep putting all of this garbage in the water, it makes it harder to see the truth, you know. So you're just clouding the facts a little bit more. You know, so when it comes down to it, Darcy Bookie Morris, which was the one that they said took her to Peoria, he ended up going to jail 4 years later. He had beaten his girlfriend almost to death, raped her and beat her and left her almost to die. And he made a threat that said, if you go to the police, you'll end up like Christina. So some people took that as he was a confession. I will tell you from working on that first book that is a standard fear tactic that probably every body said for the next several years. That's not necessarily him admitting that he killed Christina. He did end up in prison because he ended up beating a guy to death with a 2x4. So he is in prison. He is still alive. So Darcy, Bookie Morris is still alive, but unfortunately the man that I think all the rumor mill, I mean, so much rumor mill, we didn't even go over all of the rumor mill. So much rumor mill, but nothing, no evidence corroborates, I hate that word, the rumor mill, okay? The only two pieces of real evidence we have is the cell phone and the fact that there was that hit and run accident that nobody looked into. That's the only two pieces of physical evidence we have. And so when you get something rumor mill that points to the evidence that you have, that kind of legitimizes it a little bit. When you get rumor mill that's just out here and fantastic, you have to put it on a shelf and see if you can find something to back it up. If you can't, a lot of times you have to dismiss it, okay? So I've gotten quite a few people that have shared. Tammy, have you kept an eye on who all shared?
Yep. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
I'm just going to go over and turn on my wheel. Did you think of anything else that I missed? Because there's so much we could talk about on this.
No, this was one of the more interesting cases.
Yeah.
So many interesting characters.
It is. Okay, so let me know who all shared, and I'll add them to my wheel.
Got Karen, Enos, Billy Green, and Joanne. That's all I can see.
That's all you've seen?
That's all I can see on YouTube.
Okay. I'm looking, see if I see anyone else. Okay. All right, I'm going to share this. I'm going to spin the wheel. All right, Karen Langston. Karen Langston, you have won a set of my 22 caliber earrings. I believe I have your address already. If I don't, I will message you and get it from you. So you have a pair of my 22 caliber earrings. Everybody, thank you for watching. Make sure and check out the documentaries and things on this case. Make sure and check out the Christina Whittaker story. Share the story, because whether the police are investigating or not, whether this case turns out to be human trafficking or something else, whatever it turns out to be, you've still got a family who's grieving. You've still got people that need to talk about this case, because the more we talk about the case, the more leads will come in, and it gives the police more leads to work with. And the more public pressure that comes on, the more the police have to do their job, whether they want to or not. So make sure and share the story, not just my video. Make sure and share all of them. If you have Discovery Plus, make sure and check out Christina Fontana's 6-part documentary on the case. There's a link in the video description for you guys if you want to check that out. And just share it as much as you can, because this family still needs answers. It doesn't matter whether they were saints or whether they were sinners, whether she was trafficked, whether she was killed. It doesn't matter. The story needs an ending, and this family needs some help. And you've got a daughter that's being raised without a mother. So share this story. Keep joining the fight, and together we can make a difference. I'll see you guys next time. Tammy, do you want to tell everybody bye?
Goodbye, everybody.
I'll say bye for Cricket, because I don't know what happened. She got bounced off. So we'll see you next time, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you.